Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a fun episode ahead of you today. We've got some initial talk leading up into the F1 season, League of Legends season, few League of Legends games in other regions that we're going to talk about, some Magic the Gathering. So pretty solid show. Justin, good to see you. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, doing good. Happy to see you. Happy to be here for the listeners. Stoked. I think we've got a pretty good show here ahead of us this evening. I know you gave us the outline. Now, before we get into any of the competition talk, take me through your week. What's your Rose, Thorn, and Seed there, my friend?
Yeah, so it was a fun week. So after the pod last week, I knew I had a basketball game I was going to on Friday, go to see the Sixers play and everything. But Thursday morning I woke up and my cousin texted me and she said, "Hey, your cousin and I have tested positive for the unspoken thing." And was like, "Hey, we've got Flyers tickets tonight. You want to go to the game?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take free tickets to watch some ice hockey." So went to the game, had a nice night. Following night, got to go see the Sixers. And then over the weekend, Colleen and I just kind of chilled. We had some nice time playing some different games with her brother and sister-in-law, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But yeah, really just like my Rose was kind of like my full week and everything through the weekend and all after the pod, well, including the pod, I'll say, was really just a nice week. Lots of fun stuff. Good times to be had by all. So that is my
Nice.
Rose. My Thorn is just headaches, which I get pretty frequently compared to what I understand is normal, but I kind of take that as the fact that I don't typically eat meals during the day. I eat like dinner and like a late night snack. So I think that sometimes that affects it and my hydration levels and all of that. But I had a nasty one earlier today, and my brain was just kind of fried for a little bit until the Tylenol kicked in. So that's my Thorn. It's annoying. I can feel them coming on, but I can't always resolve them quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's annoying, but I've had it for a long time. So either I have a long-standing tumor or it's just my life. So it's most likely B. So
Hopefully it's mostly B.
I would hope so.
Yeah, for sure.
And my seed is that I was talking with one of my coworkers today, who's she's the assistant property manager, so a little bit above me in the chain and everything. But she was just complimenting me on kind of how I've been doing at the new job and how I've picked up on things, chit-chatting, asking me how I liked everything and
Nice.
if I thought everything was going well, which I do. And so it was just kind of nice to know that I'm coming into this team and they genuinely are looking, and she was able to look at me and what I've been doing and how I've been kind of keeping on top of things over the past couple weeks and be like, "You're doing really well. I'm impressed. I am glad to have you here and all." So I think that's a great aspect of just being there. It seems like everyone's really a team and wants to work together and everyone to be happy and succeed. And also it's pretty cool, and it just makes me more happy and looking forward to the opportunities with this new gig. Um, so yeah, that is my rose, thorn, and seed for this week. So
That's awesome. Yeah, it's super, but it just usually feels super good to be told that you're appreciated and the things that you were doing are in line with the direction that they want to be going. So that's super cool. I'm glad you're getting that feedback because yeah, sometimes it could be tough to get.
yeah, I appreciate that too from you. Like I think the like it's tough because I really don't ever feel like I'm someone who needs a pat on the back to like do my job or to like try my best or whatever.
Sure.
Um, but it's nice like confirmation that yeah, like you were saying, my efforts are aligned with like the team and what
Hmm.
we're looking to do and also yeah, felt good. So
Yeah, that's dope. Now in line with, well, my thorn is very similar to yours, and I guess it can I guess it can mean that headaches stem from a variety of different things. Um, I've been clenching my teeth a whole lot more. I don't know if like stress levels are up or what have you, but I find that I'm like clenching the back of my jaw, leading to like tension up here.
Or
So I would
do you
go
like
ahead.
grind your teeth in or anything like that? Or
At
I
night,
mean,
I probably do. Yeah.
gotcha, but you don't find yourself like typically like really like jaw locked, like grinding teeth, like just normally. Because my dentist says that everyone grinds their teeth to some extent, like at
Sure.
night, some more than others. He was telling me about a lady who actually like fucking basically imploded one of her teeth because she was like grinding her teeth so hard, which
Hmm.
is fucking nuts.
Yeah, that's
Um,
crazy.
but it I wasn't sure if that's something that you like are aware of or if you're just do you find yourself clenching or is it just like all of a sudden you're like, oh, my jaw is like sore, kind of tight, like I must be like really
I'm
tight.
hyper aware of it. I'm hyper
Okay.
aware of it happening. I can feel it all. I can feel it all
All the muscles
intensifying.
and
Yeah, because like as I've worked on my posture and have tried to, what I found is I used to lean heavily into this side. And so I've worked to come this way and back to get alignment on all the different planes, right?
yeah.
But in achieving balance at a lot of different angles, I'm finding, okay, well, where is my weakest point then? And it seems like all my stress is coming into my jaw. Like if I'm, getting worked up or whatever, I it just like clenches. So that's been tough, but I very very aware of it, very mindful of it. So I'm doing all sorts of muscle work. I stretch it out like crazy. I'm strengthening down here to keep it even and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I'm right with you, man. Some of these headaches can be just a pain in the dick.
Yeah, and there's like not an easy solution. I honestly like I'd prefer not to have to take Tylenol, but
Sure,
that
yeah.
seems to be the only thing that quite like I don't know, alleviates it at least in
Mm,
like a quick
yeah.
way.
Yeah,
So,
the anti-inflammatory quality is huge because a lot of yeah, it's just a bunch of junk that it can bring.
yeah.
So Advil helps to flush all that out, and then it relaxes easy. Um, my rose here for today and kind of for the week. Today was a mail day. I got some proxies in for Vanifar and Burgi. And to me, those decks are done now. The mana base is right. I have the fast mana. So I feel like I'm kind of done with those two decks. Those are the ones I'll be able to bring on for CDH pods, and feel like I'm bringing a gun to a gunfight. So that was awesome. And then I got a different order from Card Kingdom that I usually do. I bought the the last lot of tokens, I've been going through my decks. Shout out Moxfield. They analyze your cards and they put at the bottom all the tokens that you would need for any of the cards. So your treasure token, your 1/1 knight, your 2/2, whatever the fuck. I uploaded all my decks onto Moxfield, went to the token section for each of them and said, all right, what do I have? Went through, found all the tokens for all my decks, sleeved them up. So they're all nice. They're all in one color sleeve. There's like, the amount that's needed there, but obviously there were a couple that I didn't have. So I ordered those finishing touches and I am feeling very like I'm kind of good. I've got a couple secret layers that are going to be on the way soon. But yeah, overall, I don't feel the itch that I have. Like, oh, I got to build this deck. Oh, this legendary looks sweet. Like, oh, I got to get these cards. So a little bit of calm, a little bit of peace with organization and paring down of things that I know I just don't need. So that was a good rose. Love a mail day. Goes into my seed, which is me and Sarah are looking to expand our financial goals. But kind of me specifically with, not having my mind on cards and this and that, because overall it is kind of a distraction from some of the other upgrades that we might like to get. One of which, and this is the big one, so any listeners can hold me accountable in the future. We are looking to spongify our floor in the office and get like a nice carpet. So
Okay, so new
because a lot
carpet,
of
new pad, like
right, but there is no
nice.
pad, so it's just like shitty carpet on
Oh, so
concrete.
like carpet and pad.
Yes. Yeah. So we can add like a layer of luxury because a lot of people take their shoes off. Me and
Oh yeah.
Sarah, like I take my shoes off and I have these like little grippy socks that I use to work. So I think adding that layer would be like super key, but obviously we got to save up for that. We can't save up for that if I'm buying cardboard all the time. So I've kind of zenned and said I'm okay. But yeah, that's my rose thorn seed here for the week. Got a lot of good stuff here on the horizon. But yeah, where do you want to start here, Aaron?
Well, before we get into everything,
Sure.
I'm curious. So you have kind of gone through a character arc in terms of your Magic the Gathering and everything from when you first started playing and were playing like some standard, some of the other formats and everything before you found Commander,
Hmm.
then going into playing Commander primarily with like a mix, and then like to now where you're at with like the proxies and everything. Um, do you like have you thought, man, I wish I had just like gone straight
No.
to where I'm at now and like I can play no. Okay.
Because it was all good. It was all
Well
fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's why I was curious because there's some of those things that's like, man, like that would have been a like that would have saved me financially a decent bit or something like that. But like, it's like for me, that thing is like college. Like
Hmm.
I went in just do picking something because like I had to go to college. That's what everyone says, and so
Hmm.
I like did the thing, and then ended up switching majors, extra semester, like summer classes, like all these additional like financial things. And I'm like, I look back sometimes, I'm like, man, like I could have saved myself a lot of money by doing things differently, but then I wouldn't have the same friends, the same like whatever where I'm at now. So it's like
Right.
those experiences like built where you're at in Magic, but I was just kind of curious if that's something that that had crossed your mind at all. Like, man, it would have been way cheaper if I had just like gone straight to proxy decks for Commander and all.
Well, Yeah, it may have been cheaper, but also remember that the group that I was playing with, they weren't even that was out of the question. I didn't even know people did that. I
True.
didn't even know it existed. But I will say this, you have to play well, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but looking back on my play experience in Magic, it seems useful to have played in the standard slash limited environment where the power level is a little bit less because it helps you learn the fundamentals and the basics of the game. And then you're able to key into maybe the pillars of the game overall. So you learn about mana ramp and color fixing as like, okay, this is super important. You learn about card draw because it's like, oh wow, I need cards in my hand to play the game. Okay, you learn about like mana value economics in thinking about with a play to win mentality. There are cards that say kill target creature for 3 mana, but then there are also cards that say kill target creature that are 1 mana with a little bit of a downside. You begin to learn as a player when those downsides are worth incurring. So that's a little bit of threat assessment. That's a little bit of you learn about the price of a card because murder, which is the 3 mana, is 25 cents, but a fatal push, which is the 1 mana, that's a different price range.
Right.
So you get to learn about pillars of the game overall and how the game is designed with each of these different things in mind. So I say that to say maybe there's a world where you have to play a 3 mana rock that taps for 1 to truly understand the power of a mana rock that's 0 but taps for 2, but you got to pay 3 life on your upkeep. That's a whole different version of the mana rock, and it takes a little bit like because
Well,
at
it
the
takes
start of the
like,
game,
yeah,
you
like,
only have
well,
20 life. You're trying to take somebody down. Why would I want to lose 3 life? Oh, because mana acceleration is super important. You can get your 3 drop out on turn 1. There's this world of context that you don't really understand. It's like, okay, cool, a mana crypt, but if you don't know a worn power stone, the mana crypt doesn't seem as cool. So I'm actually happy to have taken the steps through because now I truly understand like the 0 drops, a Sylvan Library for card draw. That's like, wow. Now I truly understand like the go fast and like playing with power attitude. So no, I'm very happy that I started in the D class, as it were, if we're gonna reference racing.
yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I felt like that was probably going to be your answer, but I was just kind of curious because you really have gone through like this whole like lifetime
Yeah,
of
very much
learning
so.
magic and everything, going from point A to now point D or wherever you would say you're at
Hmm.
on the alphabet. But the other question, so when you said you sleeved your tokens, are all your tokens one color, or do you put the specific tokens in along with the decks that they're in the same color as your deck sleeves for like whichever deck
I
they're in?
I make sure all the tokens for the specific deck are all in one color sleeve, but I don't want them matching the color of my deck sleeves. So when they're on the battlefield, players can differentiate like, oh, those are the cards that he's been drawing and playing, and that green sleeve one, that's a token.
Gotcha.
But I want them all to be like uniform and neat, and tokens are little pieces of cardboard too. They can get dirty and whatever.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought
All for neatness and clarity.
makes sense. So very cool. But that was just a side note before we kind of get into the
Sure.
meat of the episode today.
They were good questions.
So the first like brief stuff I just wanted to kind of touch on a little bit was the F1 winter testing dates and all. I was just looking into that and kind of getting an idea. I've got that itch. I'm ready for racing. Even Colleen the other day was like, I miss F1 because
Ooh, there
she's
you
like,
go.
oh, like she enjoyed the Sundays where we just like when we weren't doing race companions and we just sat down and like watched the race together or whatever. Like it was fun to her.
That's awesome.
Which yeah, like that makes me happy because it's something that we can do, and she's not just like, I'll go do your F1 thing and I'll like go do my thing. So that's awesome. But winter testing starts in Barcelona from February 21st to the 25th, and then they're in Bahrain from March 10th through the 12th. So that'll be pretty exciting. We're about a little over a month out from the initial winter testing, but I'm excited to kind of see how the cars look, how they handle, how the drivers kind of like pick them up and everything. I mean, we've seen guys like Danny Ricks come into McLaren and kind of struggle with adjusting to a new car for the first few races of the season until he really kind of found the limits of it and everything. I think that this is going to be much more so everyone kind of in that boat, since we know that none of these guys have driven these cars before. It's all simulations. It's all like getting an idea of what the cars can do. But once the 2022 cars hit the track, put rubber to pavement, we'll kind of get an idea of how they are. Are they easy to control? Are drivers like able to pick up on that? So I'm looking forward to that. But do you have anything with the like anything for winter testing that you're really like looking out for, that you're kind of itching to see?
Yes. So, in learning about some of the different personalities that we've had in Formula One, what you find out, and this could be easily overlooked, but what you find out is that the engineers have way more to do with the trajectory of history than the drivers do. There is a world where, so you learn about guys like Jackie Stewart, who had a large influence on safety regulations and the way that things were handled around the track and marshals and this and that. But that's from a driver perspective. You have engineering feats, marvels, what would you call them? Light bulbs, innovations. So like new things that get slapped on a car that lead to teams looking and saying, "Oh, that's the thing that we have to do now," and that steers the direction of Formula One. So I would like to take that to talk about guys like Adrian Newey on Red Bull Racing. So he was able to take, along with Christian Horner and the team that they have in the garage. But let's take Max and Sergio out of the car and just think about the car that Red Bull was able to put together. There's a sense in which Red Bull had to match the machine to even give Max a chance. And on a grid where many other teams were struggling and being like, oh, the pink Mercedes, like even when a team took inspiration from a winning vehicle, they were kind of shit on. So when that's happening, when teams can't even like I don't want to say imitate or copy, but they can't even like use that as a reference. They can't even do something similar. There is even more of a pressure on these engineers and the designers to produce a race winning car. So this brings me back to guys like Adrian Newey, along with Christian Horner. When you learn about their trajectory through the sport, they did not start with a winning garage. They did not start with these parts that were going to blow out a Mercedes. When it comes down to the design of the car, there are choices made by the guys in the aero department, the guys in the parts department, and whatever decisions that are being made that are totally outside of the realm of the driver.
Mm.
But we so much talk about, the Maxes and the Landos and the Lewises, because that's who we see week in and weekend out. They're the guys doing the interviews and whatever. But you hear about guys like, and this name comes up all the time when you learn about McLaren, and you hear about Senna and Elaine and everything that happened in those days. You hear about a guy named John Barnard, or Bannard, I guess you would say, who had insane influence on modern Formula One. There are innovations that he stuck on cars that are now staples of what we're seeing on modern day Formula.
Yeah.
So I say all of that to say, I hope that we see some push towards focus on the package that these teams are able to bring, and maybe just a little bit, shed a little bit of light on the minds behind the machines that the drivers are getting into. Because at a certain point, the cars are just as fascinating as the drama and the tracks and, the tire strategy. Like, it truly goes so deep that I'm very much looking forward to learning about more of the engineering side of Formula One.
Yeah, and I'd say potentially even more interesting if you really take the time to dig into it. There's just the big thing, like you were saying, we know about Max and Lando, and like that's because that's the content. The
Sure.
content that's out there is we're watching these 20 racers race 23 times a season now. And that's the content. Yeah, you have the little like tech debriefing that F1 puts out and everything, which is not going to knock it. Amazing. But like there is so much less content in regards to the actual structure and all of the ingenuity and engineering behind those like really incredible cars
Mhm.
than what's put out, at least in the forefront of public eyes. So I think that's part of it, but I agree. I think it's extremely interesting to see those different innovations and things like that. And also, like you said, like the package that teams are bringing, like that stuck out to me because like there were times back in the 80s, the 90s, like the cars weren't going as fast as they are now. The engines were not as good quality. The like everything that they were building, I mean, it worked at the time, but like they probably weren't hitting 199 miles per hour down the straight with their wing open. They were probably like going 150, 160, something like that. Still incredibly fast, but the aerodynamics and all of the different components of the car have to adjust differently based on just simply the power behind the engine.
Mhm.
And like, is it giving more torque? So you have to like really like make it streamlined so that as your tires are gripping, you're really propelling the car and there's not as much holding it back, or maybe you are getting like that power and everything for top speeds that were the best then, but then you're looking at those different aerodynamic packages of like, oh, like I have to turn this way, like fuck, I mean the asphalt on on the tracks was probably different and everything over the years. Like there are all of these components that go into that, and it's really like it's fascinating, and like you could spend forever and a day probably going down the rabbit hole because all of these teams have probably 100 or so engineers who are all working on all these components and
I'm
parts and
sure.
making them work together. At least 100, I would imagine hundreds, but I have no idea. But for each team and that much work going into it, you could probably read for fucking decades just to figure out what's going on with the 2022 cars and like how they came up with the um things that they did that we will get to see for the new regulations and all. So,
Yeah, it's I think fascinating how not only have there been pushes from engineers and developers to create new tech, but there's also a sense in which the governing body presents the new rule sets and regulations, and then the teams have to like work within that like a puzzle and um almost break that rule or the clause and say where's the wiggle room within that. And we'll see 10 different constructors, 10 different teams try and do that. I imagine
yeah.
we'll see many different variations of the the side panel where we used to have the barge boards and all that.
Mhm.
But to the point about package, it's what made a team like AlphaTauri so competitive as the 2021 season went along, is where maybe they didn't have the most experienced drivers, maybe they didn't have the best parts or the best engine or whatever, but it seemed like they were really adapting their aero and whatever sticky uppy bits that they had on the car to suit the tracks and the weekends well and place maybe a little higher than expected.
Yeah, I think that a big thing that they seemed to have was a car that was just drivable. Like we
Sure.
hear about cars that are difficult to control. We hear about, oh, like this is different than that car and this is this, and like the two rookie Haas drivers being in a machine that wasn't getting upgrades, wasn't getting worked on throughout the year, and so they're kind of stuck with this car that like doesn't have the kind of control and the kind of drivability that you would want in a competitive F1 car.
Sure.
And so that's why we're seeing a lot more. I mean, other than the fact that they're rookies and that they're like young and learning, like I'm sure a lot of the crashes, spins, Mazza spin, and everything are partially due to just the car and the engineering and the like lack of improvement that Haas was putting into that intentionally in
Sure.
preparation for this 2022 season. Um, but yeah, it's really that makes a team like Toro or like AlphaTauri. I almost said Toro Rosso because I've been watching too many
Would have been
old
close.
videos. But AlphaTauri putting together a really solid car that it isn't doesn't have the top straight line speed, doesn't have the top turn speed, but it's got like pretty solid in both, and it's like very controlled where a rookie driver like Yuki can like have really solid performances, and those little blips on the radar of, oh, he spun out, oh, he crashed, are just like more than likely due to a new driver getting used to new tracks that they've never driven on before, getting used to an F1 car comparatively to an F2,
Hmm.
F3, whatever series they're coming from kind of car. And I think that speaks to like I think Yuki proved himself that he proved to everyone that he himself has a lot of talent and that
Yeah.
he like deservedly is in F1 and all, and is an exciting person to watch. But there's also that additional aspect of like AlphaTauri gave him a really, really solid car
Mm-hmm.
that he was able to learn on and still be competitive to get the ability to like the Haas cars, yeah, they got to learn how to drive an F1 car and all the buttons on the steering wheel and everything, but they had a lot less opportunity to be in these little like fights and battles in the midfield and trying to uh, defend, overtake, like all those things. You're
Sure.
not you're
Yeah.
not defending when blue flags are being waved at you. So Yuki having the ability to have that car also, I think, is exponentially important in his growth as a driver because he was able
Great
to
point.
actually be in those fights and be competitive to some extent
Mm-hmm.
in a number of races, to get that kind of knowledge and feel.
And exceedingly towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean he ended up with getting I think his top finish was P4
Yeah.
right towards the end of the season, which is really phenomenal for a rookie
Mm-hmm.
driver. So I think all of those things are extremely valuable for him as a driver, and the ability to put together that kind of car is so important. Um, but a side note, a tweet that I know I'm always going off on my tweets that I see and everything, but I saw a tweet this past week and I was like, oh, that's actually like pretty interesting. And I feel like it fits well. But
Go
his
for it.
tweet was that this person said, I'd honestly pay for an F1 goggle box style show where we just sit and listen to the mechanics, engineers, pit crew watching the races in their team garage, get to hear them cheer for drivers, go off about FIA decisions, and just generally chatting shit to one another would be a classic. And I think that is like such a cool side of, like I said, there's not that much content surrounding these other team members. It's all primarily about interviews with like the team principal or the
Mm-hmm.
drivers, or maybe you get like a head engineer on occasion, but
Mm-hmm.
you got Toto and Christian Horner and Gunther Steiner and Max and Lewis and all the drivers. It's like that's your primary content. That would be a cool side thing to be like, oh, like what does it sound like when the team principal is like box, and all of a sudden these guys spring into action. They're like,
Right.
I got front left, I got front right, or like maybe they aren't saying anything because they're probably
I
not saying
imagine they
that
don't
much
have to
because they
say
already
much.
have
Yeah, yeah.
their job. But like
Mm-hmm.
to be like, yo boys, let's go, like getting into that stuff. I thought that would be an interesting thing,
Yeah, I
more
agree.
about like race day, less about the actual production of the parts and components of the car. But
Or
I
even like what they're talking about out on the grid. I think some of that would be what some of that would be fun, like before a race start, where they're doing all the last minute, this and that. I imagine though there's a lot of like proprietary technical information that would be said over those radios, so it'd be tough
maybe,
to.
but there was also a video that forget if it was Red Bull or F1 put out on the race in 2020 where Max's car got completely jacked up on the drive to the grid and everything, and they had their 30 minutes or whatever to try and put the car back together, and
Yeah.
they're sitting there like getting after it on the grid with the car.
Mm-hmm.
And there you do hear a lot of like the back and forth and like, hey, like where are we at? Like where are things? Like is the
Yeah.
car going to be ready? Oh, we've got like 6 minutes left until start, like you've got to like wear things. Do you have the brake ducts like refitted,
Mm-hmm.
like whatever. um and so going through all of that, like it was interesting to get a different like kind of behind the scenes, like pull the curtain back and everything, and look at what goes on in that mad rush in that instance of
Mm-hmm.
getting the car ready. um but I also I feel like these guys are around racing constantly. They also, of course, do have some biases that they're pulling for their team and
Sure.
everything. But I feel like there would be some interesting insights that maybe we don't think of as even just regular viewers of F1 who
Oh,
are
of course,
consistently
yeah.
watching and all, where we might pick up on some little tidbits here and there that are like fascinating little pieces of info. Or hey, maybe we're not watching it, but someone puts out a highlight clip of the Red Bulls pit crew and everything in the garage, and like the different little bits that they say. So
Yeah, I imagine there's a decent bit to be gained from something like that, or at least give you a little bit of a peek into the garage and the life of a team member, not one of the maybe forward facing members, you could say.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. There's
what an
like
interesting idea.
I think it would be fun, but I mean, you never know. We've got FIA radio right now. Maybe coming up we'll have mic'd up pit teams.
Yeah,
So
just a whole
yeah.
bunch of just a whole bunch of just small little like guys really a cunt, eh? Yep. Oh, that was a tough. Yep. And just like little sound bites.
I'll
Not that
even
interesting at
take
all.
they do like best of team radios and stuff like
Yeah, those
that.
are
Like,
good.
hey, how about best of like I mean there's 10 teams,
Best of
best of
garage
like
radio, sure.
garage radio. Like you've got 10 teams, there's got to be enough interesting stuff said during a 2 hour long race that
Yeah,
you can get 10 teams to put together a 5 minute little video with some highlights of like what they're talking about as they go through. So
maybe as a
uh,
team member, you wouldn't want to censor yourself like that. Like if you knew that that was possible, maybe they wouldn't say anything. I don't
it's
know.
fair. There's also like that's kind of how it ends up being with like, and the NFL does like mic'd up players for each
Right.
game, and it's always like the guy going over, and it's like the running back, and he's like jogging over to the wide receivers. He's like, oh, I'm mic'd up. I'm mic'd up. Don't say anything like too like they're
Jeez.
talking trash or like cursing up or whatever it is. Like, y'all mic'd up. Like, be careful.
Damn. Damn, damn,
So
damn. Yeah, you
I
kind of like lose the spirit then.
yeah, I feel you with that. But I feel like with F1, there hasn't been too much. I mean, we're getting radio between
That's
the
true.
team principals and
That's
Michael
true.
Massey, so they don't seem to hold back too much in those.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I'm excited. I'm just excited for F1 to be back. I've been
Me too.
watching a lot of content that's been put out about different things. I've been watching some old race highlights and
Sick.
stuff. I'm ready. I'm
Yeah,
ready for it.
I
My
agree.
my mind and body are ready for F1.
Nice. As am I. The last thing I wanted to say on Formula One, I want to send a big old apology out to Carlos Sainz. I was not like that high on him. I don't know what I thought, but I was watching the racer's perspective of Monza 2020. So it was just like from a bunch of different cockpits. And Carlos Sainz was a total animal during that race. And like we were talking about, some of his radio messages, he was like, I want this win. P1's mine. I'm getting him. Like he was so hungry. And I was like, damn, that is not that is not the character that I like had perceived him to be. And yeah, so my view on him has changed significantly when he was chasing down Pierre Gasly. I got a different sense of the gentleman, and for that I appreciate him as a competitor a lot more now.
I think that's good, but I don't know if like apology is necessarily needed. I think it's just your understanding of like him as a competitor has
Well, yeah, I
changed
never
because
talked
like
shit on him or anything.
no, because like with especially with a driver like him, Carlos is not typically featured in a lot of like content. He's very well spoken, but he doesn't really get into too much of the like any drama. Like I can't
Right.
think of any sort of like controversy featuring Carlos Sainz. like
Yeah, okay.
I just can't right now. And I maybe there's something, but like he's just not the kind of person that like if I think of like controversial decisions, controversial driving, like he is
Hmm.
like back of the fucking list for me.
Yeah,
So
big time.
I think in that sense, like it's just the perception that he gives off. Like I probably mentioned it on the pod before, but at the last hotel that I worked at, I was 24, 25 years old. And at some point, I was probably working there for close to a year. And I'm talking with some guys, and they're like, oh, yeah, like I was really hungover the other day. Like I didn't even drink that much. That's that 30s club, you know. Like Aaron, you know what we're talking about. I'm like, did you just say I'm in my 30s? I'm like, bro, I'm like 24, 25. They're like, it's the way you carry yourself. It's the way that you put yourself out there and all. And like granted, like in my work life, I was always trying to put my best foot forward. I was trying to
Sure.
really like act very professional, like not get involved in little like tiffs and whatever, and just like I was there to do my job and do it as well as I could and like
Hmm.
support my people. But that's kind of like the Carlos Sainz similar thing. Like he puts himself out there as this like really fun, like energetic but not like aggressive person and everything. Like he's obviously a competitor, but he's not like he doesn't seem like the kind of cutthroat guy that you might think of for some other people. But then
Sure.
when you're seeing it in that actual race environment,
Hmm.
it's like, man, this guy like he is just as much a competitor as anyone else
Yeah,
out on the grid, and he also like has that same drive, that same like grind preparedness that all of these guys do, and he will fucking get in there. He
exactly.
may be a little more calculated or like less like risky than some people, but man, he's like he wants to get after it.
Yeah,
So
very much so. So yeah, it was fun to watch him in that race from like his perspective. And yeah, get a
was that a highlight video, or was it a like did you watch through kind of the like main race like
it was on
was
the F1 TV and the documentaries. It's
okay.
Inside Tracks is the
Gotcha.
series, yeah. And it's like a bunch of different races just from the driver's perspective, and it like flips through a bunch of the
But it's
different
the entire
cams.
race, or is it like
Yeah, it's the entire
highlights?
race. Well,
Oh,
it's
that's awesome.
highlights of the race. So it was only like 20 minutes or whatever.
Okay, gotcha. But
Yeah, yeah.
still, that's like a decent bit of like
Yeah, it was
video
cool.
footage and everything.
Mhm.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. So
Carlos is a G. But yeah, that was kind of all I wanted to touch on for Formula 1 there.
nice. Well, moving right along, we've got some League of Legends that's coming up, a little bit that's happened. Justin, what do you like? I know we've got a little bit of LPL and LCK that have already started.
Yep.
We've got the regular season for LCS coming up, the lock-in tournament
Yep.
starting on Friday, so 2 days from now. Um, Anything you're looking forward to in particular? Like, what have you thought? Have you watched any of the games from LCK and LPL, or kind of what are you thinking based on anything you've seen so far leading into this new 12th season of League of Legends?
I think in so we're just a couple days into the LPL season, and I think yesterday or like this morning,
This morning ish.
however the fucking time zones work out, was LCK. So T1 beat Kwandong Freaks. I believe it was 0-2 or 2-0, and
2-0,
then
yeah.
Sandbox did the same to DRX. Now, I mean, there's just two series from one region, and then kind of the same from LPL. We had a couple of series, and that looked pretty straightforward as well. A lot of teams at the top of the table you would expect. Fun Plus Phoenix, OMG, LNG, and Edward Gaming. Also up there is Anyone's Legend and Rare Atom, two teams that I don't believe we've talked about here on the podcast, but we will learn more about as the season goes on. So I basically just say that to say there's not like a whole lot to go on. But if you'll indulge me, I can talk about some of the things that stuck out mainly from the LPL, and then I have one note that I can talk about for the LCK.
Yeah, well, before I did want to mention just
Go for it.
briefly, like you said, we've only had two series or two matches in the LCK spring so far, but the fact that I don't know how to fifth what is that 50 LIIV, is that Roman numerals or is it Live Sandbox?
I think it's Live. That's what I've been
Okay,
calling them.
gotcha. So Live Sandbox.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, the fact that they beat and 2-0'd Dragon X kind of caught me off guard because I expected Dragon X to be one of the better teams in the LCK. They do have a relatively similar roster to what they were running this past year with Barrel, Deft, Piosic. I believe just changing their top and mid laners, Zika and Kingen, and
Hmm.
bringing those guys in. Um, that kind of surprised me that they lost to Sandbox. Not anything in regard to Sandbox not being a good team or anything, but um, I felt as though Dragon X, that's a little bit of an upset in my mind for seeing that. And obviously, as the season progresses, we'll get a better idea of like where the different teams are at if that's the case. Um, but I would not be surprised to see Dragon X perform a little bit better going forward. Um, I that kind of surprised me just looking at the initial standings for LCK after the first day.
Yeah, on paper, I think you would have guessed DRX to take it just based on the rosters. However, I imagine with the new season and with the patch changes that came in, I have a feeling there are going to be a significant amount of maybe champion pool issues. In that game, we were looking at DRX picked Sona Viego with Aphelios as their first pick. And also, it was answered by a red pick Yumi with Caitlyn Bans and Samira Bans. So, what I'm saying is maybe we'll see parity between good, well, traditionally good and traditionally maybe underrated teams. We'll see parity in the pick and bans in these first couple weeks as teams kind of like flesh out the meta, see what other regions are doing. Because based on the pick and bans for LCK, it's very different than what you see in LPL.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
think
tough to know who's
though
right.
It is, but also just based on some stuff that I've seen with like solo queue and everything.
Yeah.
The like when you look at the other LCK matchup with the with T1 versus the Kwangdong Freaks,
Yep.
formerly Africa.
Yep.
Um, T1 just was nailing everything in the draft like pretty solidly. Like they hit the champions that are performing really well, particularly in their
First pick
game two.
Karma.
Well, and in game two they have Faker on Victor. Victor
Mm-hmm.
is extremely strong with the item changes.
Mm-hmm.
Caitlyn, who is
Mm-hmm.
also very strong with an enchanter support. So you have the karma there, which like the enchanter supports are going to be kind of the primary supports that we're seeing. We're going to see a lot of Nami, a lot of Karma, a lot of Yumi, and a number of other support champions in that category.
Mm-hmm. I don't
But
think
even
Sona's it though.
Sona, probably
So
not.
squishy, no mobility. I know the alt's decent, but
I think
I just said it to say I like the Karma pick better, and I like the ones that you mentioned better.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Go
Yeah, and
ahead.
I think that those different support champions are going to really dominate the early season. So
Seems like it.
I expect that we're going to see some really um, pretty like aggressive play in terms of that. Like those enchanters are also not just like passive. The karma can go aggressive, put out damage. The Nami, you're moving forward to throw bubbles out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yumi, yeah, like you're doing Yumi things and just sitting on someone primarily. But I think that it gives it'll give a cool new look to this season, or at least the start of it, comparatively to kind of the tank support and really like utility and CC heavy supports that we were seeing from the end of this past season. Um, but
Or at least it looks like it's going to be a trade off between the aggressive lane or the enchanter, like long range lane.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, and probably some counter picking and all throughout the early season until people kind of figure out a consistent competitive meta.
sure.
Um,
So a lot
but
of reasons that we may see upsets, like you were talking about with DRX and Sandbox.
yeah, but I mean for T1's matchup, like their game two in particular, like
Hmm.
every champion that they picked is just like a strong meta champion. And honestly, the fact that they got the draft that they did with the Victor mid, Jax top, Nidalee jungle, Karma support, and Caitlyn ADC or bot lane is like that is an incredibly strong um, just matchup against essentially anything that would be played in the current meta,
Hmm. Yeah, I would
which
agree.
showed in their 18 to 4 kill, 10 to 2 tower, and control of all other objective game
Hmm.
that they played throughout that. So really impressive stuff coming out of T1. I don't think anyone expected them not to impress, but I felt like that read on the meta was pretty good. Um, but then you were mentioning LCK and LPL
Hmm.
don't have a ton of similarities in terms of like
Not
picks and
yet,
draft and
anyway.
everything. So from LPL and everything, what did stand out? What seemed to be the priority in terms of the early on so far for the LPL season?
Well, they're grabbing the big thing is Corki mid, but before we hop off the T1 topic, I just want to point out something like really tricky that they did. So they banned Renekton first, which is traditionally a first pick or second pick that teams will go for if they're planning to use the Nidalee jungle, right?
Mm.
So they banned the Renekton, and who knows how much information, but they banned the Renekton and then picked the Nidalee anyway. So there may have been some like, oh, maybe we went for a different strategy than they may have thought. So just interesting stuff from LCK overall. Moving over to the LPL, asking about picks, is that Corki mid, and it's not. I'm not so concerned about the picks, but it's the way that they're diving these fucking turrets. They are setting up on opponent weak side and just diving over and over and over, and that's why you're seeing the things like the Gwen and the Kennen and these champions that are going to be able to fight that turret dive. And in a lot of these games, you're actually seeing some of those dives get flipped. So what it feels like is coming out of the LPL is that classic go fast, fucking hammer it home aggression that we're really used to seeing from the LPL. And it is coming in droves. And I'll say this about the Corki pick: when combined with pressure, what can you do with a Corki? You can use that package to make moves. You can bring it mid to gank top. You have easy access to a dragon fight. He offers mobility from a champion that doesn't sacrifice anything to get that mobility. It's just like every couple of minutes you just get a free gank to the bottom lane or a free fucking dragon. So seeing the way that these mid laners are moving with that Corki pick, and the way the teams are being built around that capability to roam, right to roam, they're really utilizing it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that it is the strength of the champion along with the strength of those additional like utility and kind of just the things that make them that champion, like Corki, like you said, the ability to get that package, roam, like have that essentially semi-global
It feels
abilities
like
that,
it,
I
because you
mean,
get the then and then the Valk on top of it that you can hit just massive swaths of board.
you're going further than an early game, at least nocturnal. Like you have more range
Like
with that.
Talia Wall.
Yeah, like
Mm.
you have a ton of range and ability and everything with that pick. And then like I had mentioned the other week with like the items and everything, and Corki being so strong in general because of the Ravenous Hydra changes and things like that, to be able to be a ranged item as well and
Hmm.
get those extra procs off based on the E ability and the different other utility that Corki like provides. It makes him so strong, and I agree with you. That is kind of a surprise that in the LCK we didn't really see as much of that, and I would have to double check and see if that was due to
He wasn't banned.
he wasn't banned.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's yeah, looking at the LCK picks and bans, like he was not uh, picked or banned in any of the four games, which is so interesting to see the differences early on, especially in the metas and everything.
Hmm.
The Syndra and Rise picks in the LCK, and then seeing that in the LPL with the Corki, who's still kind of can play like a ranged mage, but seems to have a lot more like utility and just strength, I would say, based on what we've kind of initially seen.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
definitely. So I think that has been one of the most impactful. We've seen a couple of the mid laners want to pick up the Vex for the long range damage and the dash. So we'll see how useful the Vex is. But yeah, other than that, pretty standard fare. Obviously, teams are loving the Gwen top side, matching that up against and Jax's, all sorts of shenanigans. We're still seeing Jace in the meta, so we're not too far removed from what we saw at Worlds 2021. Just with a couple little flavor dashes here and there. But yeah, Corki, Vex, long range ADs like Jinx.
Yeah, I think that it's going to take a little time for everything to solidify. Obviously, the early season is going to have, I think, a little bit more frequent or larger changes in terms of the patches and everything to try and kind of see where things are at and start to adjust early on. They've obviously tapered off in terms of like making big patches before or right before the international tournaments and everything.
Yeah.
So it definitely will be nice to kind of get an idea of what looks strong to these different teams and what kind of the meta is going to start to look like. But yeah, I'm excited for that, and I'm excited for the LCS coming up. We've got the lock-in tournament this weekend.
January 14th.
I know that you and I had talked initially, but one of the big things I'm looking forward to in the start of the season in particular is
Mm-hmm.
Bjergsen
Yeah.
and kind of these roster changes that have happened in NA and where things are at, what
Yep.
things are looking like. Yeah, I'm looking forward to really seeing Bjergsen in particular coming back and what the expectations of him are and how he performs comparatively. I think it's going to be really interesting seeing him come back into a really totally different league than the one that he left in terms of players and who all he's going to be facing up against. So.
Yeah, well, I don't have expectations either way. We'll see what happens. I definitely wish him the best. I think I'm going to be following Team Liquid maybe closer than I have previously. But yeah, he is one of a he's a player that I've loved to watch. He's a player that so many North American fans have loved to watch. So I think it's good business to have him back in the league. And yeah, like you said, I'm just looking forward to him to play again. He had a skill expression on the Rift that didn't come out in a lot of players. So yeah, it's going to be fun to have him back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think that it's going to be a really nice addition to the league and everything. Um, I think it will be pretty interesting just to see how honestly the younger mid laners who are coming up compare against him. There's not a lot of similarities for who's in the league since he left. Power of Evil being one of few mid laners who was in the league when he decided to retire, and then he coached Power of Evil. So the Team Liquid versus TSM, or actually not TSM. Where is PoE playing now? Oh,
FlyQuest.
like is it?
It's my guess.
I don't think so. I could be wrong though. Um, I'm just gonna Google it because that's easier. Uh, Power of Evil is playing for Immortals.
Ah,
So,
there we go.
um, so you're right along the correct like thought path. Um, So he'll be playing for Immortals coming into this season. But yeah, like one of a few mid laners that were around when Bjergsen retired, and I'm curious to see that matchup because Bjergsen obviously got to coach Power of Evil. I'm sure they both know each other now at this point very well in terms of like what they prioritize in lane, what kind of champions they prioritize. So I'm curious to see that matchup just on a like almost like psychological mind game type matchup. There's not too frequently that you get to see a coach of someone come back and compete in a competitive nature against
Yeah.
their Padawan, as it as it were. So
Maybe
haven't
it's
seen a
just
fight like this since Obi-Wan and Anakin.
yeah, seriously, it's just gonna be Bjergsen yelling, "I have the high ground." Power of Evil just leaping at him. No,
I
who knows?
mean, I'll
I'm
take it.
curious if they ever would have like 1v1'd each other. I'm curious if Power would really even be able to get a sense of how Bjergsen would play at this point. Maybe they've caught each other in solo queue, and that would probably have given Power more info than Bjergsen as a coach. But if anything, Bjerg probably has some decent information in with regards to that on Power of Evil, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely does. And I do kind of wonder that because I've been watching a number of videos, Cloud9's content that they've been putting out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was with LS and him talking about like as a coach, kind of their team structure and all, and how they have their 5-man LCS roster, they have their 5-man academy roster, but they also have um, a number of other auxiliary players that are outside of that, which I think if I remember correctly, he said something to the effect of close to 15, 17 people that they are going to have available for like internal scrimming and internal like solo queue essentially where they can like pick up and play games with all these people, including himself as a coach, since I think he was D1, D2 in Korea. And so like he's still at a relatively competitive level to be able to like play in a scrim environment with his team and all. So looking at that, it's kind of interesting, and it does make me curious what other teams have done in that nature when they've had
Yeah.
former players as coaches. I mean, we've seen Crepo come in
Mm-hmm.
and coach teams. I forget his alias that he went by when it starts with a B, but whatever alias he went by when he was coaching. But Crepo going from a player to caster to coach to kind of bouncing around and probably like being involved in like some internal like scrims, internal like 2v2s and whatnot. Looking at, I'm sure there are a number of other players that have had the opportunity to go from that player role to a coaching role and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Reaper.
Reaper definitely one. I think his is a little further removed than some of the other coaches. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
like Bjergsen, he was at least we didn't get to see that kind of environment and all when he first left playing
Yep.
competitively to become a coach.
Gotcha.
I think that the structure of everything was probably different, even though Reaper was keeping up and playing the game and making sure he knew what was like going on with meta reads and things like that. I don't know if like T1 or any of the other teams had those kind of internal scrims as much as we're starting to see, at least in the
Right.
Western Hemisphere now. I know that Korea and LPL obviously did that prior with sister teams and things like that, but
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more
Samsung Blue.
um, common or kind of in your face now with the LCS and like how they're vocal and talking about those things, especially in an environment like NA where unlike Korea, where the solo queue is extremely competitive and climbing
Hmm.
the ladder as a random person can like mean you getting a huge contract on a big name
Right.
team and everything. Like the LCS is not quite the same, and now we're getting to that
Well,
point
neither is
where
the public environment. The like
yeah, the standard like ranked
the
play and
solo queue ladder.
everything
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
solo
It's on a
queue
sub level.
is so it kind of is interesting how they've finally, I feel like, switched over to this internal scrimming. Even there were times where they would try and do solo queue essentially on like the Riot servers, like the tournament realm, with just LCS players, and even that did not go phenomenally in NA. So
Right.
um,
Well, you're like meshing personalities and you're trying to get like maybe like three alphas and two whatevers, to mesh. And when in reality, like you actually just have to build a team around one star player and a bunch of, whatever.
yeah,
So yeah, I can imagine those environments are hard to cultivate.
yeah. So we're gonna see kind of how that goes with
Keep an
I
eye
mean
on it.
C9 with Bjergsen coming back in. I mean C9 obviously has Fudge switching over to the mid lane role, so who knows how that's going to go out the
Yeah.
gate. But a lot of fun, good League of Legends coming up. We've got 15 games this weekend to check out. Each team is going to be playing 3 games and getting to kind of dive right in and look at that. And
Yep.
we'll have some initial reactions, of course, next week. Some probably too soon reactions to what we see, but it'll be
Hmm.
fun to just kind of diagnose and look at the games and all. So looking
Well,
forward to that.
and we'll also be able to bring a more critical eye this year. I mean, just we've done we've done more coverage of LPL and LCK this episode than we've done our whole podcasting career.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be able to paint a better picture of overall what's going on in the world, and say like, oh well, why would they pick this if like this was what's usually paired with the Jarvan or whatever the fuck. But yeah, the lock in is going to be a great place to start. We've got Group A, Group B, bunch of teams seeded into both, and they're just going to go crazy, and we'll see what happens this weekend, January 14th.
Yep. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Welcome back, LCS. Um,
Welcome back, man.
um,
Copyrighted.
Any other notes you
Nope.
wanted to hit on with League of Legends? No.
I
Okay.
think I think I'm all good there.
Well,
Talk about some cardboard crack, baby.
let's get to it. Let's snort that cardboard crack right up.
That
I
would
think.
be depressing if you would like to like grind up a magic card. Jeez,
Oh
dude.
man, I wasn't gonna go that far with it.
Bleak future, man. Bleak future.
Oh, so that's what you've been doing with all those cards you were getting rid of.
Yeah, paring down means going up my nose. Jeez,
Oh man, that would not fun.
not fun.
Your ENT doctor would not be thrilled.
No,
But
no, he would not. But what was fun was the 3 games of Magic that we got to play on Monday. We brought back, I don't know if he was around when we would have been talking about it, but a gentleman from the play group, his name is Brandon. He had took some time off and he came back on Monday for some games. We got, like I said, we got 3 games in, and bringing a new player always brings some interesting elements into the fold. So that's kind of where my conversation is gonna come from here today. Was bringing a new player into the play group.
was he? I don't really remember him being part of the play group from when we have talked.
Okay. So
But
he probably stepped away before me and you like really started getting into it with Commander.
yeah, I think so. But what brought him back?
I believe the pandemic kind of had him scared to a decent degree, and well within reason.
Mm.
So I know he was maybe taking some time off from being around people for a while, but all the while he was ordering cards and building decks. So he came locked and loaded and ready to play. So I think most of it was just just being patient with the world,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
fair.
perfectly fine. Yeah.
Definitely.
Now I will say he
What?
has. Go ahead. What were you gonna ask?
Well, I was gonna say, like, obviously during the pandemic, you and I'm sure the other guys in the play group were building decks and all. Do you know if he was doing stuff similar to you and like looking to do some of the online um, stuff, or was he just strictly like just
I think he
watching,
was just
reading, and
building.
buying?
Yeah,
Like,
I think it was that because and that's where that's what I'd like to talk about because he is somebody who prefers like very casual, low power commander games. Like low interaction. He doesn't like a board wipe. He doesn't want to be counterspelled, and he would rather like each player build up their board states and then kind of see who can win that way. So I say that to say no, I can't imagine he would want to be casting demonic tutors and mana crypts to the degree that was part of the conversation is like, oh no, I don't have any of this in there, oh no, I don't build that, oh no, don't have that. So the gameplay was much different than it has been.
gotcha.
um Not that that's a bad thing, just different. He just had different ideas about deck building.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So were those, do they seem to primarily be based on like his concepts of the deck building, or does it seem like he is following a certain like pattern or certain thought process that's out there in the community, or is it just like I bought a certain number of packs, these are the cards I got, and I built the best decks, and like I don't really fuck around with getting those like crazy expensive cards or doing too much shit because like this is a hobby and I don't want to fucking bankrupt my
Yep.
child's college fund.
And
Like,
that's very much where he is. So he likes to build in like the Vorthos space, the very thematic, flavorful, have everything kind of all work together, play with creatures of all the same type. I know he has like an angel deck. He was playing vampires on Monday. So the deck just spits out a bunch of vampires, turns those vampires sideways, and like life links and all that kind of stuff. So he tends to build on, like I said, like a flavor Vorthosy end as far as like a powerful end.
yeah, which also it sounds like does require kind of allowing everyone to get to their full board state before you're really like trying to knock people out
Right.
and do all those attacking and draining of life and whatnot. Um, Makes sense in that context and everything. But definitely different, I feel like, from what you usually look for in your playgroups. And also, like, on another note, I feel like you are well equipped to play differently because of the number of decks and the like different power levels that you have for your decks. But
You got it.
I know that Ian initially, at least, I don't know if we've talked recently about him changing that up at all. But I know that he had a little bit less of a um, ability to play some lower powered decks and everything that were more just like fun decks previously. So
I'm not sure what the hang up was or if there's a hang up at all, but I think just simply you're right. Ian just builds powerful decks. And I know I have an idea of what his like single card budget is. So I know Ian's number of like if it's above this, I don't consider it. I don't care. It doesn't. But if it's
Not
below
worth my
that,
while.
right.
Yeah.
But if it's below that, it's well within the right to purchase or whatever. So Ian works within that, and like his number allows for access to like some pretty powerful cards. So yeah, Ian just likes to build powerful decks. But like you were saying, with that in mind, yeah, I brought a deck that had no removal spells, no counter spells, no way to like fuck up what my opponents are doing. I was just really focused on my main thing. There's one board wipe in the deck, and that's it. But because I knew Brandon was coming, I wanted to like cultivate and engender the type of game experience that's going to make him have the best time. And Brett is somebody who builds similar decks to like that kind of style. He'll work with like, ooh, this card's really cool. I'll put that in there. It may not be the best card, but it fits in that slot and that's okay. So if Brett or if Ian is one of four players that like he's got the combo, he's got a bunch of removal and like, some big powerful baddies, that's okay. That's just
Hmm.
like, we can easily kind of turn our attention, be mindful of what he's doing. So yeah, I think there is a world where you have to be mindful of what other people like to play, and that was very helpful in these games because if we were all trying to like sling combos and like cast mana crypts and whatever, Brandon would have been like, "What the fuck? Like this isn't even fun."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think that's the point of the pod is like you're having a group of people who you can try and play with on a similar level and everything and
exactly.
like have a good time. And then you have other groups that you like individually can go to and say, yeah, like I'm gonna play CEDH decks. I'm gonna like slide the my proxy from behind the other card into the front of the
Mm-hmm.
sleeve and like that's
Go
that's
to
my
town.
readjustment and play some like extremely competitive games and all
Right.
as opposed to that it's similar to like back when I was in high school. I think my dad and I would go golfing and everything periodically. And one thing that he had mentioned was that like golf is a sport you can play with just about anyone and like
Mm-hmm.
have a good time without it being like everyone can be relatively similar. Like we played with one of his teacher friends who was a bit older than like 10 years older than him and the
Yep.
guy's wife. And so like me and my dad are hitting from one tee, like his teacher friend is hitting from the seniors tee, the wife is hitting from the ladies tee, and we all like had a blast and had a nice day out
Sure.
on the course and everything and played some fun golf and everything. And it was like relatively similar in terms of like our scores and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to be able to have that kind of group that you can just be like, hey, let's like go and play these kinds of decks and everything. But also understandable that like in Ian's terms, like he is if he's going to spend money, he's going to spend it on like building a really solid deck and
Sure.
everything and
Yeah.
like
And that's cool
wanting to
too.
win and be competitive and like yeah completely like and with Commander it's nice that the format is a four-person format so you have the ability to yeah like if you guys are like he's turning up too quick. Let's
Yeah, you
like
can easily just
slow him down a little bit
3v1.
and like, hey, sorry, man. Like, we're not there yet. Like, calm down.
Exactly. Well, and like, yeah, and in the games, he totally gets that. He welcomes it. So yeah, it really just makes for good times. And I think
Nice.
what's going to be fun is like depending on the pod, depending on the people that are playing, because at this point we have a couple different people now that we can play with. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to talk about the varying different power levels and the different games that we have. But I will say this. So, power level does not mean I'm not going to make the optimal choice, or what I perceive to be the optimal choice.
Oh, for sure. That's like
So
when I played my rec league basketball, like I've talked to my teammates about it. I'm like I'm here to have fun and play basketball, but I want to win.
right,
Like my goal is to win, but I'm also not going to take it seriously in a sense that I'm going to start getting like freaking out and getting upset about bad ref
right,
calls when these guys are getting paid fucking like $30 to ref my game, and like they're not professionals. They're not
right.
like they're just here to
Yeah,
make
we're
some
not here for
money
that.
and like try and ref a basketball game
Yeah,
decently. Like
definitely.
they're like so yeah, I get that aspect of it.
Well, and I bring that up because there was in the second game that I won playing Intet the Dreamer. I like I was given an opportunity to attack Brandon first with my commander, and once you hit somebody with commander damage, you're incentivized to just keep hitting that player because no matter what their life total is, you hit them for 21 combat damage with your commander and they die. They're out. They could be at 1,000 life, but if I hit you for 21 commander damage, you're dead. And I had, I had you. This is where the play to win mindset really like it's the way to go. So he was telling me before the game and openly talking about, no interaction. I don't like kill spells. Every kill spell I can't have a vampire in and blah, blah, blah. So when the time comes to it, when I'm looking around the table to swing with my commander, you've given me known info. Like if I look at Brett, literally every single combat step that I have to contend with Brett, he always is casting something during the combat step. So most of the time when I'm like contending with Brett, a lot of times I declare no blockers because he always has something going on.
Yeah,
Ian,
so you have to defend yourself and have that ability for the
just
oh
for
what's it?
something else. Like I don't want to get
Yeah,
blown
like
out.
instant spells and
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And Ian always has that stuff. Like he's always playing, Path to Exile, swords. Like he's always going to kill your thing. But if you're openly going to tell me before the game that you have no spells in your deck that are going to kill my thing, yeah, yes, I'm going to swing at you. And this is where I may take a little bit of issue. Then it's like, oh well, may it's implied that maybe I should have spread the love around. It's asked, why did it go in his direction and this and that? And it's like, well, it's not going to get killed. You don't have any blockers. Like the list goes on and on. But I think ultimately is sometimes the sense, and not just from this game, and he's not like an offender of it. It just reminded me of situations that you can get in where just because you're playing a casual game of Magic doesn't mean that players aren't going to like try and make the choices to win, because ultimately it is a game where at the end of it only one may stand, you know?
Well, and you're playing at the only reason that you play a game like Magic, like
Is
I
to win at it.
right,
Yeah.
you are playing games because you want to win. Like it, yes, you can 100% have fun along the way.
And
You can
have
have
all
a
sorts of other things nested within that.
and have a blast, and like there are so many other things, but like that's what makes you a player of Magic the Gathering and
Mm-hmm.
not a card collector of Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
You're not collecting cards and building decks because you like the art. You're building
Mm-hmm.
decks because you want to use that deck to compete and hopefully win in
Right.
whatever format, group, whatnot you're playing in. So like I that just makes sense. It's like you want to come in there and like win, but like if you know that he's not going to be able to like fuck with you later in the game, it's like
That's
in
the obvious choice.
Survivor, Big Brother, any of those things where the strong ass person who's making it to the end is like, yeah, I want to take this weak link with me because like I know if I'm 1v1 against them, like I got this.
Hmm.
Like and like not to say like anything bad in regards to your playgroup or anything,
No.
but it's just a fact of the matter. Like with
Hmm.
you guys, and I mean, you know what Ian's bringing to the table. You know what Ian knows what you're bringing to the table. You know what Brett has. Like you guys know each other's decks
Right.
well enough to have an expectation of
And he like
that.
fell victim to that a little bit, where it's like, I'm not going to them. No, you're the easy target. Was
Oh,
like kind
100%.
of, yeah, that's basically just what I wanted to get to. Where it was
No,
like
it's
he was just surprised. I was like, yeah, you're the easy target here, dude.
yeah.
So I took him out and then was able to end up winning the game. But yeah, it was just fun, but like interesting how you can have just different attitudes towards the same game.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's really nice that you're able to do that too and like so easily flex between the two as well. Like I feel like some instances it might be difficult to go from like, oh, I'm just casually doing whatever to oh, like I want to like really like compete
right.
against the best of the best and everything. And like your goal is the same. You're still trying to win
Mhm.
like very different levels and you, like it's cool that you can fluctuate between the two and have like a good time either way. But you got the win in one of the games.
The
Tell me a little
dub.
bit about your deck and kind of what were kind of just key features, main win conditions that you had for it.
There were pretty much only two cards that mattered in the game for me. So it was an enchantment called Inexorable Tide. So three a blue and a blue for an enchantment that reads, whenever I cast a spell, proliferate. And proliferate means on any permanent, you may place one more counter of any counter that is already there on it. So if you have +1/+1 counters, you get another +1/+1 counter. If you have a loyalty counter on a planeswalker, you get another loyalty counter when you proliferate. So I had Inexorable Tide on the battlefield and an artifact called Magistrate Scepter that you put charge counters on it, and you can remove charge counters to take extra turns. And you don't have to sacrifice the scepter. And there are like no downsides to the scepter,
So
like
you just
when
get to be like, oh, I use these charges and I
yes.
untap everything
Yes,
and
and then I
swing
cast a
again.
bunch of spells, proliferate the counters, and so I ended up taking like 3 or 4 turns in a row. But it was like it was pretty epic. Like I had like 6 counters stacked up on the Magistrate Scepter, so that's like 2 turns worth of counters. Like I was doing disgusting things within this little engine that I had going on, because with the Inexorable Tide, every time I cast a spell, I would get a charge counter on my extra turn thing. So I would just need to cast like 2 spells every turn, 2 or 3 spells every turn, and I could just get an extra turn with those charge counters. And it felt really busted and really broken, but yeah,
Well,
I
and
mean, it won me the game.
you also get to draw another card each
Yeah.
of those
Oh yeah.
turns too. So
It's a full
you're
return. Yeah. So it's untap,
Jesus.
upkeep, draw. You get all the goodies, and so you get like another land drop and everything. It was crazy. And Ian was just doing like a bunch of these.
I
He's
was
like
about
checking.
to ask what the reaction was.
Yeah. Well, because when you get to a board state like that, you're walking this very fine line of like you don't want to have to pass the turn. You just want to try and end the game right there. And so
Right.
there's also when we play Magic, Ian's on his way to work. He works third shift. So there is a sense in which like I did have to close it out quick, or he would have to be like, "Oh, I just got to go."
Yeah.
So it is a little bit of that, but I have to say Magic players need to get better at just letting the winning turn go through. Let the guy play his cards. Like I hate a guy that's like, "Oh, so now you get it's just he has it." where they just like backseat the. It's like, hey man, like let me beat you, let me beat you. You don't get to beat you.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit of that,
it
but
makes
yeah,
them feel better, Justin.
I guess it makes them feel like, oh, I know what's coming, you got it. But
Oh,
overall, it's a little whatever. But it was fun to make all those counters and take all those turns because yeah, it was sick. And inexorable tide, I will say, mail day was in my last package, and I could not have predicted it be as much of a house as it was. I was like, this card seems good. In action, it was way better. It was way better than the $6 told me. I'm hunting for this card every single time I play that deck. It is the golden pig. It's got to be the best card in the deck. It just enabled so much. I was like, this thing is amazing.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so
That
it
sounds
was a
like
good
fun.
dub. Good times
Very.
all around. But yeah, I'm hogging the mic over here. Let's get to the flavor of the week. Tell me what you've been getting up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So for my flavor of the week, my food on Sunday, Colleen and I got together with her brother and sister-in-law, and we ordered some good Indian food.
Nice.
And that was actually my first time having uh like takeout or like delivery Indian food.
Okay.
My only previous experience was when I was in college. I worked at a hotel. I had some guests from India who stayed there for a couple of months, and we built a nice little friendship and everything while they were staying there. And they would just cook homemade Indian food and bring it to me. So that was my own. So I knew I liked Indian food, but I had only had this like homemade like kind of concept of it.
Yeah. So how was the takeout? How did it compare?
Very good. It's
Oh yeah.
been probably 6 years since that time when I was having that homemade Indian food. But this,
That
so it's
time. The time of the
I
homemade
mean
Indian food.
it's just it's a long time ago. I feel like I've lived a lifetime since then, but
Damn.
it compared very well. Phenomenal. I still enjoy Indian food as much as I did then, and the spice and all of that that goes into it. So,
Nice.
delicious. That is my flavor of the week. For my music, this was something that I meant to mention like 2 weeks ago or so, when we first came back from our break. And Colleen and I were watching the movie Don't Look Up, which is out. I forget where. I think it's Netflix, but
Yeah.
um, generally about people ignoring signs of great danger and
Hmm.
whatnot. But during the movie, a song came on, and I was like, there are very few times when I know not only like a song title when I hear it, other than like classics and like things that you hear at sporting events and whatever. Like this song came on, and I'm like, that's Doorman by Slow Tie. And it wasn't the like intro. It was like mid song where they picked up and like for this scene had this song playing. I'm like, I know that song, and it's a UK grime song.
Did they have any
And
of the lyrics, or was it just the beat?
no, it was like beat and lyrics, but
Oh,
it
cool.
wasn't like the chorus or anything. And I'm like, that's this song. And I paused the fucking movie and I pulled out Spotify and was like, I have that on this playlist. Like pulled it up, and I like showed Colleen. It was like a minute and 45 seconds into the song where the clip that was in the movie like
Damn, good
started.
ear.
And I was just very, very impressed with myself, to the point that I put a note in my phone that I came across the other day, which is why I remembered it for this week.
That's so
But
funny.
I was like, that is very impressive for myself, just because I'm so bad at like I I can learn lyrics, I can memorize songs, I can do that whole part of it, but I can sing an entire song and you could be like, yo, who's that by? And like, what's the name of the song? And be like, I
No
don't
clue.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Or like maybe I know the artist. You're like, what album? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right, right.
So it just
So to be halfway into a song and call the name of it, that sounds
like the
pretty
name
good.
and the artist for
Yeah.
me is like that is a fucking diamond in the rough for
Hell
my
yeah.
memory and my brain.
Nice.
Um, so and also Slow Tie in general is a dope grime rapper, a grime artist. I've enjoyed a number of his songs, so I definitely recommend it. So that is my music that I wanted to mention this week. For my visual medium, I wanted to bring up something that we can dig into a little bit more. I know we're at the end of the episode typically, but while Colleen and I were hanging out with her brother and sister in law, they recently got the Oculus. And so we were messing around a little bit with the virtual reality gaming and all. And it was really interesting and kind of brought up like some different thoughts because when back in the day my family got the Wii for Christmas and that was I looked it up. The Wii came out in like late 2006, right before Christmas. So we probably got it like 2007, 2008, like somewhere in that ballpark. Um, and the difference and similarities between like the Wii when it came out to the Oculus now, and that like motion detection, the use of the different remotes, the technology that's gone into it was like
Yeah.
wild to kind of see. I mean, we did her brother-in-law or her brother had us do this like walk the plank thing where you step off a wooden beam like on a skyscraper and everything's just falling around you or you're falling
Mm-hmm.
through the air and like can look around and see and you're just like plummeting and it was wild to like feel the kind of like feelings and like thought process of like that happening while also
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it's like not real in a sense. So it was pretty interesting to kind of like just check that out and get a feel for what VR gaming is kind of like. So
That's interesting talking about you get a sense of the feeling of what it might be like. There was an AI researcher who asked the question of another deep thinker, and the question was, do you think there'll be an onus to want to stay inside that virtual reality? And the gentleman, his idea was that there are there are feedback things within us that make like hard reality so much more engaging, and that you talking about this plank thing brings that gentleman to my mind, where so you can get really close to these sensations but you can't reproduce like the wind under the arm, the audio, like the flapping of your shirt and this and that. So there is a sense in which I can imagine these feelings are maybe eerie in a way where it's a it's a low resolution representation of what the thing would be.
it was it was really bizarre feeling almost because
Sure.
like in your mind and your visuals and everything you're like oh I am plummeting from 30 stories up like to the ground
But
but
there's
like
nothing
there's
tactile
yeah
telling you
you're
that.
not feeling any sort of like falling but like the visuals are like trying to essentially trick your mind into
Right.
that and everything. um,
Right.
And like just for anyone who like watches anime, like the show Sword Art Online, like is it kind of like delves into that a little bit where they're going into this virtual reality world and there's no repercussions and like you can log out and whatever. And then like that's what's going on when the players are playing the beta of this game, and then the game launches for everyone. All these people join in, and the creator of the game makes it so that you can't log out of like
Damn.
you're trapped. And so no longer is the if I die I respawn, if I like it
Right.
doesn't matter what I do. There's now like this is where you are, and like everything all of a sudden matters as if it was real life, but like you're in this virtual world. So this has like some of those aspects of like, oh yeah, it seems like relatively realistic, but like it's not.
Right.
And so
That's creepy as fuck.
it's a strange like thing playing some of the other games like the ping pong and stuff like that. It like
Mhm.
felt pretty much like I was playing like an actual game of ping pong. The
Sure.
remote is probably similar to the weight of a paddle. It can't be that much difference. They're both light. There's that haptic feedback from like hitting the ball.
Love that word.
Um, you're getting like those things. And so in that kind of game where you aren't having these residual like feelings around you that
Mhm.
necessarily feed into the visuals, where it is just that simple of you like hitting a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
It was like very realistic to the point where I was talking with Colleen's brother and he was saying how for the ping pong game like you can set it to different levels. You can play at a like professional level, like extra, like all these different competitive like levels of it. And he's like, yeah, professional, like some professional players will utilize this as like essentially a practice tool, which made
Jeez.
me think of how F1 drivers are
Use the
using these
Sims.
simulated setups, like using these different kind of uh, technologies to whether it's like the F1 game or like the Sims or like I guarantee that plenty of those drivers play the F1 like game with their little setup that's not in the actual full on like Red Bull simulator.
Yeah.
It just in terms of like learning turns, learning the track layouts, like getting an idea of like what that looks like and everything more than the actual driving, but just to like learn it. I'm sure they're utilizing that. Um, and like it made me think like a virtual reality like racing game would be wild, like so cool. And so that was kind of where my thoughts started to run with that. But
Sure. Well, I think that's what iRacing kind of tries to be. I know they don't have like the VR helmet yet, but with the in-depth physics and that the game has and all that, I know. Yeah, we're not that far away. But I think the thing that you're hitting on that's really interesting is the fact that some of these technologies are 1 to 1, or at least let's say like zero point 0.9 to 1 of representations of reality, to where it's good enough that you can use it for practice, so you don't have to wreck tires and wreck this and injure your knees and whatever. You can just practice on the virtual medium and it be um, maybe not as effective as real world practice, but at least it gives you something.
yeah, I think it makes or it allows you to almost have like better practice. Like
Yeah.
you can go to and I'm just comparing it to basketball right now since I'm playing in a league, but like you can have a practice with a basketball team where you guys are running plays and running a scrimmage and all. But like there's also component to the guy who goes to the gym by himself and just like shoots 1,000 shots in
Mm-hmm.
that day and gets practice in and all that is yeah, you don't have a hand in your face, you don't have a guy guarding you, you're just like going through the motions of how to shoot a shot and make it. But there's a component of that that is so valuable, and it may not be quite as valuable as a real life situation and real life like environment in a game, but it still has its own value in improving your ability to perform in those other environments and all.
Oh,
So
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
so it's definitely a cool thought, and just like thinking of, I mean, I think when the Wii came out, I was under the expectation that every video game by 2021, I mean, that's 14 years, 2022, so that's 15 years ago now, would be like this super in-depth VR where we're like, got a little setup where we're like fake running in place and all and like going
Well, that'll
around
be
and
one level to it, that'll
yeah.
be the serious Chad. But the Xbox Connect and the PlayStation Move and all that stuff, like they were just I mean, it looking back, it just kind of feels like bloatware. Like I don't know how much of that is like really fun. So I think the tech is gonna have to get slimmed down, and the packages may have to get a little bit bigger to give people a more comprehensive, like you had said, with some of the haptic feedback with the ping pong, getting like the vests for like first person shooters and this and that. But yeah, it still feels like we're a pretty long way away from that. But obviously, it does have its benefits.
Yeah, and I think that those previous systems and all, like all, albeit they had their flaws and everything, I think they kind of pushed for the growth of the technology and everything to eventually get to where we're at to some
Yeah,
extent.
I agree.
Like you don't just get the Oculus straight out. You have to have these little components, and everything before you get to these like virtual sim setups and Oculus and these other virtual reality style games and devices and also.
Yeah, I'm
But
just looking
that
forward to the Oculus Clit. That's when I'll get in there.
won't be able to find it in stores.
It's got a hood.
But that's my flavor of the week. On that note,
Nice.
um, and how about yourself, man? What do you got this week? What's been catching your attention?
I'm gonna start with my visual medium. Me and Sarah were watching. So we started with X-Men, and we actually enjoyed it so much that we watched the second one, and we're probably gonna go through like a bunch of the series. Because you have the first, you have X one, two, and three, and then you have like the first class little series. So yeah, that was fun to go back through. Honestly, they aged pretty well. There was a lot of like really good stuff. It wasn't like as campy as I thought it might have been. Obviously, like Hugh Jackman's hair is ridiculous just to try and match the like Wolverine fucking dagger head that he has. Um, but yeah, overall, I remembered it fondly, and watching it again was like a really good time. So yeah, that was fun.
That's definitely a nice thing when a movie that you enjoyed ages well.
Hmm.
Um, I can name plenty of examples that have not.
Yeah,
So
you go back, you're just like, oh god, this is wait, what?
like I watched this when I was 12 and it was the sickest thing ever, and now I'm
Right.
just like uh
Yeah, not doing it. But yeah,
yeah.
these did pretty okay, so we're looking forward to getting the rest of the series in.
Nice, that's fun.
Yeah, for my food, I just have to say home cooking in general. I love Sarah so much for all the work that she puts in the kitchen, and doing the shopping and the prep and a lot of it. I help where I can, but I'm really not as good as she is. But I have to say, more often than not, if we order out or stop somewhere or whatever, I'm more disappointed than I am like, yeah, I'm really happy I spent that money on that meal.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know if my palate's changing or what, but yeah, overall, I'm just like, I wish I didn't eat that.
I think it's a combo. It's like the knowledge of like I think especially in your space of work and everything, a lot of things that you work with are not solely based on the person's like physical makeup that determines their like issues and muscles that need to be worked on and things like that, but like hydration, like what you're eating, all of those
Yes,
things like add into those components. So I'm sure
very much
there's a
so.
part of you that looks at like eating out or like eating junky stuff, even if you're like on the go or whatever, you're just like, you know, the things that's like not going to make you feel good.
Right.
It's not so like you're almost like turned off to it based on that aspect, let alone the I mean nutrients and lack thereof that you're probably getting from some of those meals and all. Not that it's not okay to indulge on occasion and
Oh,
whatnot, but
sure.
I get what you mean. Like I really enjoy yeah, the home cooking and doing that stuff. It's
It's
fun
really good
too.
stuff.
And even though you give credit to Sarah, where I'm sure it's due, every good chef needs a good sous chef to do
There you go.
the little things that help out.
I've
So
sliced a potato in my day.
there you
But
go.
no, she does a wonderful job. But this week I was listening to Highway 61 Revisited. If you're a long time listener, you would know that that was on one of my top albums. I went back to it on the record player, and I just fucking laid on the floor. I didn't do anything. I just had, a little bit of smoke with me, and I just laid, closed my eyes, and I just listened to the album, and it was an enlightening experience. I enjoyed it so much.
Sounds awesome. Sounds
Yeah.
like a nice time and going back to an album you enjoy. So
And to a degree, I felt like I was hearing it. Honestly, it felt like I was hearing it for the first time in many ways, which was like
I,
really exciting.
listening to something on vinyl is always like I feel like a different experience. It's such a like it's like you're doing something, you're not just listening to something. You're
Yeah,
like a active participant putting the disc on the player and putting the needle down and the vibe is just very different.
I would agree. And
So
I definitely enjoyed the vibe that was had.
nice. That's awesome.
Highway 61.
Highway 61. It is a callback. I have it on my list right in front of me, along with a few others.
That's awesome.
Deltron 3030, Ziggy Stardust, and Mars. So
Yep.
some of those other ones that were on your list. But I guess that does bring us to the end of our flavors of the week and thus the end of this week's episode.
Yes, sir.
Um, Fun episode. I'm looking forward to being able to talk about some of the LCS lock-in tournament and everything going on there, comparing
Yep.
that with these other regions like we kind of looked at the LPL and LCK. But so happy for all of you all to be here listening, of course, on Spotify, on YouTube. And don't forget, you can always get in touch with us and find us on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one. So any interaction that people want to reach out, chat with us, hear about the episode, give us thoughts. Looking to hear from you all. But Justin, why don't you take us on out of here?
You have hit all the points. Get in touch with us on the socials. Leave us an email, leave a comment, whatever you would like to do. Overall, we would just like to thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed the show. That has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, everybody. Peace out.
Later.